Welcome to Supply Chain Now, the voice of global supply chain. Supply Chain Now focuses on the best in the business for our worldwide audience, the people, the technologies, the best practices, and today's critical issues, the challenges and opportunities. Stay tuned to hear from those making global business happen right here on Supply Chain Now.
Hey everybody, good morning. Scott Luton right here with you on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to this episode. Really excited about this episode. We're going to be diving into supply chain and risk management and a lot more leadership with someone from the aerospace industry. Someone's been doing it for quite some time. We're going to really work hard to raise your business leadership and supply chain IQ right here today. So stay tuned for what's going to be an intriguing and very informative conversation. A quick programming note. If you enjoy this episode, be sure to find Supply Chain Now and subscribe so you don't miss any conversations just like this one here. All right, so I want to welcome in our guests here today. I've really enjoyed our pre-show conversations, wide-ranging. I'm telling you, y'all are in store for a lot of learnings here and some very helpful best practices. Ingrid Sampson, Director, Subcontract Program Management at Lockheed Martin. Ingrid, good morning, good afternoon, whatever time it is in your neck of the woods. Good to see you.
Good to see you also, Scott.
So really enjoyed our pre-interview call. I tell you, we need about 6 hours to really get all your perspective out, but we've got about an hour today, and I'm really excited to learn more about you and share your perspective with our global community. So before we get to the heavy lifting, let's get to know Ingrid Sampson a little bit better. So tell us, where did you grow up and give us some anecdotes from your upbringing?
So the cool thing is I grew up in LA, and having come from Georgia, and I have to differentiate, not Lower Alabama, but Los Angeles. And so I was a child in the 70s and was able to roam around freely. My mom gave me all the independence in the world. And so I grew up just exploring. And at 7, I traveled for the first time, and I've been traveling ever since, right? So this sense of I can get on my bike and ride anywhere, I can get on a plane and go places at a young age was part of my DNA, and one that, did well in my career itself, and having traveled all over the world for Lockheed Martin.
So it sounds like your parents and specifically your mother really encouraged you to get out there and kind of experience things.
Yeah, and it's interesting. And I mentioned mom, but my dad worked for Lockheed. So I'm a second generation Lockheedian. And he bought like I'm doing now. And so he encouraged me to start at Lockheed, but to explore different things. So I did leave for a bit and do some sales and, kind of mix it up a little bit. And sold commercial car products related to purchasing, and then came back to Lockheed Martin.
Okay. Is that pretty common for the company to have second and third generation family members come be a part?
Oh my gosh, yes. It's common to have people with over 25, 30, 40 years. Just celebrated 40-year anniversary, one of my employees the other day, and he's not the only one on my team. And to have second and third generations, it's very common. And then I've got people on my team whose children also work at Lockheed right now, right? You got 2 generations working at the same time. So yeah, very common, very common.
We're going to be talking about some of your positions as part of your journey to help shape your worldview in just a second. But I imagine when I talk with organizational leaders that have that great advantage of tenure, right, within the workforce at these great big companies, that tends to be a double-edged sword, right? Because from a cultural standpoint and the family, kind of that family and the values, it's there, and the continuity and other things. But on the flip side, I would imagine, I'd love to get your take. Does it kind of just on a human level, kind of how we've always done it is probably part of what's between the ears. Can you speak to that for a second?
Yeah, and I mean, the reality is changing. The employee I was talking to yesterday, 25 years, another one 40 years, and I've got 26 years at Lockheed Martin, and I left for 7. And it was common to come and stay with a company or stay with a corporation for a long time. The reality is it's different, and we're feeling it in the workforce now, where I have a pension. Those coming behind me right now don't have a pension. So there's a different frame of mind, right? Where they're chasing salary, they're chasing the money because the pension isn't there. They don't have to build it themselves. Although we've got programs that the company does matching, it doesn't compare, to a pension.
Right.
So times have changed. And so you're not going to see people stay with one company as long. Now, what we are seeing, and it goes for the just pure size and the complexity of the products we offer, is within Lockheed Martin, people are moving from one business area to the other, right? They're staying with Lockheed Martin. They're going from airplanes to helicopters to missiles, to trainers there's just this wide array of products that you can stay within the corporation and move around. And that's really our preference, right? Rather than losing that talent and having to start over. But we also know the Lockheed talent is valuable to the outside
Right.
market.
Especially that well-rounded
Truly.
element that you're kind of spoke to earlier. So love that. Okay. So let's talk about, I think you just said 26 years with Lockheed Martin. You've got 7 maybe outside the company. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let's talk about roles, positions, certain stops in your journey that really helped shape your worldview, Ingrid.
That's a great question. I think starting at Lockheed at a young age out of college, the sheer responsibility we have. As a buyer, I was responsible for millions of dollars, and I was part of the team that won the YF-22. That was the highlight of my career. That's one of the coolest aircrafts. I even say second to the F-35. I love the F-22.
I agree with
I
you.
grew up on it.
I agree with you. As an Air Force veteran and a big nerd of military aircraft, I wish we had 2,000 or 10,000 F-22s. I think it's a gorgeous and incredibly capable aircraft.
Is and the performance. And I remember being there on the first flight and having been a buyer, and I'm looking at, my components on that aircraft. I had the transparency, I had all the lights, I had the hydraulics, I had all these pieces, right? This is my plane.
That's awesome.
And that plane took off that first day. It was like such a proud moment when you talk about highlights of your career. But I'll never forget the landing gear didn't come up when the plane went up. I'm going, oh my God, what's wrong? Right? That's my part. What happened? And I'm looking at the engineers and they're all going, and they came down safely, of course, but it was just the ownership that comes with the type of roles and responsibilities that we have. I had the pleasure of starting up the P3 line. P3 aircraft's been around for a long time, many generations, and we were extending the life of the aircraft, building new wings, old technology in the midst of new technology. Think about the challenges that went with that. I had the pleasure of working in ethics. I was the ethics director for aeronautics for 2 years. And you talk about seeing a different side of the business, right? Things people do, how the company reacts, managing risk. It really rounded up my experience really well.
So if I can ask you a quick follow-up
Sure.
question really quick, Ingrid. I think perhaps many of our listeners, much like I, when I hear the word ethics, I bet we have no sense of what that leadership role, what you did to fulfill it. Can you just shed a little more light on what some of the things you did in that ethics role?
So here we call it ethics and business conduct. And our value statement is do what's right, respect others, and perform with excellence. 8 words. How simple can that go? And so our business conduct is around those 8 words. And so we have what we call investigations, like any other ethics department, but we also have where we do just counseling, someone wanting to know how to handle situations, or true investigations. And I'll tell you, coming into the role without an ethics background, I was taking ethics courses, getting training, right? There's certifications that go with it. There's people that come up through security and investigations and FBI and attorneys, and it's a well-rounded area and field of people with different backgrounds, but you're handling and addressing all kinds of situations. It's not just, performance, it's individual performance, it's leadership performance. Did they perform? Did they react to situations? It's leaders being investigated. It's individual contributors. Think about it. We do manufacturing. And a represented employee, sometimes handles things differently than a salary employee. So the dynamics that go with this, what do you report to the corporation? What does the corporation report to the outside world when it comes time to reporting performance. It's huge. It's a really, really interesting world, but
Nope.
one where people are looking for immediate response and everybody knows what they want, right? We want you to find them guilty. We want them to be terminated, and that's not always the case.
Wow.
So it was very interesting.
I've got such a big blind spot in that corporate definition of ethics. So I bet you could write a book on some things you've seen.
Truly.
But let's keep you were kind of answering some of those positions that really helped shape your worldview in this journey. Anything else you want to add before we kind of talk about what you're up to now?
So having grown up in aeronautics doing airplanes, and then coming here to training logistics and solutions, TLS, I never thought about, how are the warfighters, how are they trained? So building aircrafts, you deliver them to your customer, you're like, okay, great. Well, this side of the world enabled me to be able to understand, well, how are they trained? The maintainers, the pilots, and it's just as simple things as their pilot suits on the F-35, right? The pilot suit and the helmet. They're to every single thing to each pilot, getting to that level of detail and recognizing training saves lives, right? You don't have to train in an aircraft that's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. You can train in a simulator, and it's grades of training that they'll go through, what we call just at a computer terminal using iPads, right? And grading up to you're going to a simulator, a full motion simulator that gives you the full, like you're sitting in an aircraft, those type of things. I had never thought before coming into this role. And how exciting is that? All right. Simulators and futuristic and training and lasers. And it's just exciting stuff. So I've enjoyed it.
I agree with you, man. All right. So one of the questions we like asking folks is that Eureka moment. We have plenty of them. And these days we might have one a day, I tell you. But when you look back at your journey thus far, what's been a really powerful Eureka moment that you've had?
I think it was when I became interested in leadership and moving from individual contributor or buyer into leadership. And it wasn't just I want to be a leader. It's really about having the support to go into leadership, right? And so you hear people talk about mentor, sponsors, and champion, the importance of that champion to move along in your career. And one of the aha moments, and you're going to laugh at this, but it's a true story. Interviewing for a director role, and it was not my best interview. Everybody was late, just all these things that when you're all prepared and everything's supposed to go correct, everything went wrong. And it was not my best interview. And I left there going, oh my God, this is just horrible. There's no way I'm getting this job. But my champion was also in that room, and he knew what I was capable of, although it wasn't the best interview. And so I got the job, and he gave me feedback as to, what I'd done wrong, which I already knew because it was not the best interview. But it just helped me, as a leader, being a mentor to people, but also being champions and sponsors of individuals, how important it is to the trajectory of your career.
I love that. I'm not laughing at all. I think sometimes we as leaders and as maybe hiring managers or you name it across the spectrum, we might let that last interaction carry way too much weight and not look at the potential that folks bring to the table. So I really appreciate you sharing that. Also, on your email, you got a great quote, because I think about leadership, not waiting for others to do, we do. And so you've got a great quote here from Barack Obama, President Barack Obama, quote, "Change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek," end quote. Why is that so important to you?
That's important to me because in this environment where diversity and inclusion is so important, right? People want to not only be included, but, and offer to seat at the table. And when they're sitting at the table, they want their voice to be heard. And so as a leader, in making sure that that is truly represented in what I do and say, but also in my team, is very important. And there's, numerous studies out there that are referencing and have proven the power of diversity in the performance of a team. And so to walk the walk and talk the talk is very important to me. And so if I go back to mentoring, championing, and sponsoring, and mentoring, championing, and sponsoring of people who look like me and who don't look like me is very important. And that my team is representative of the community of which we live is very important to me.
Wonderful. And we're going to talk more about that here momentarily. I appreciate your comments there. So let's, we'll have some folks, clearly you and I know Lockheed Martin very well. And of course, F-22 and F-35. And I wish we had a snapshot of when that first F-22 took off, as you were describing, because I can only imagine the immense pride that you and really the whole team took in that, and how those aircraft are used, to protect the country and project force and really project freedom globally. Not to be too dramatic, but that's what I believe. So let's talk about what do you do at Lockheed as Director of Subcontract Program Management at Lockheed Martin? What do you do?
So in the business of TLS, Training Logistics Solutions, I'm responsible for all the procurement we do for all of our products and services. So when you're talking about $1.5 million to $2 million, billion spent annually, right? It's a lot of responsibility that goes with that.
So Ingrid, we're talking about the massive responsibility you have, billions of dollars, goodness gracious, in your role at Lockheed Martin. But what is your, what's your favorite aspect to your role? What's that favorite part that you're able to do, week in, week out, day in, day out, what have you?
So it's two things. One is the people, building this team of just stellar performance. And two, the impact we have on the business. The reality is we purchase about 70% of everything that we sell. And so with that comes a huge responsibility. And the thought that I contribute to the profit and loss of that business, right, of my business by how we perform is so important to me. And I'll tell you, to my team, they know my number one priority after people is that we perform and that we always perform and meet the customer requirements. And we're never the reason that something doesn't, meet a customer's requirements or doesn't deliver or doesn't work. It's just important that we always perform. And last year, on top of COVID, the pandemic, telecommuting, everybody going home on March 18th, we had 7 months of no red subcontractors. So when you talk about performance, in the midst of the hardest time of my whole career, we were able to perform because of the things that we do on a daily basis and looking forward, managing risk, understanding risk, those things. And so the performance and contribution to the business success is super important to me.
I appreciate you sharing. And really, when teams perform, that's when we're able to offer opportunities above and beyond, right?
Truly.
All right. So I want to shift gears now. Let's talk. You were talking earlier, diversity and inclusion. Clearly, you've got a long track record of very successfully building diverse teams that do perform. All right. Because and clearly, like you just stated, people come first and performance is a close second. So I love that. But if you could offer some best practices from your experience in building truly successful diverse teams, what would you share with our audience here about that?
For me, it's not only diversifying the people and look at skin color, but experience. So a supply chain team, to me, that's made of just supply chain, you're limiting your ability to manage your risk and manage your own problems. So on my team, we've got attorneys, we've got engineers, we've got quality personnel, we've got true supply chain degree individuals. My degree is in psychology, right? So you can't tell me someone in a different degree can't perform in this role, but it enables me to, see things differently and be able to relate to people, maybe in ways that other leaders aren't able to do it. So to me, a truly diverse and experience and background makes us even stronger as a team versus building building internally, right? So building external as well as internal talent just helps us perform in total.
What If you had to pick one of the regular challenges in your journey of building diverse teams that perform, what comes to mind? And can you offer any? Because I bet other leaders that are tuned in, probably experience that. How what's the biggest one of the biggest challenges, and how did you overcome that?
One of the biggest challenges is, I think, coming into a group where their philosophy was hiring within and bringing in individuals, bringing in friends of theirs, bringing in, the kids that they knew growing up, and being very limited in the talent that we were seeking. And so to the team, what I did early on was identify what were our challenges, right? Some of them was contracts aligning with the prime contract. Some of them were risk. These things that were hindering our ability to perform, and then start filling in with people who had those experiences, just made us stronger. But it was first getting people to recognize what the challenges were. Their mind, we're doing great, right? But when you've got mission success milestones, which means these are reported to the corporate, which are reported to the board, so you can't miss those. But
right.
It's got to be something just exuberant, that's unrecoverable. And so in picking up what our challenges were, filling it with individuals with those experiences, I think it just made us stronger. But people having to buy into that because they're used to hiring the neighbor and and other people that they knew and they've seen them grow up, and friends that were out of jobs, and going, no, that doesn't work. That doesn't make us stronger, right? Makes you happier, but it doesn't make us stronger.
Right.
And once they bought into it and they saw how well we could perform and that we could manage our risk versus realizing our risk, the buy-in from there has been monumental. And I've gotten a couple of comments when going through performance reviews, and they're like, wow, I never thought about approaching the problem like this, right? And then partnering with the functions, right, that impact our ability to perform. Because you think about supply chain, it's the capture, it's closing the capture, it's the identifying what bill of material or planning goes with that. It's, all these things. And then they say, okay, now go buy it. The technical requirements. And so we're at the last of the totem pole, but at this point, all the pressure is on us to perform. And so we started partnering with those functions that were hindering our ability to perform: engineering, contracts, capture. I've got someone on the capture team now. And so those things, for any leader, I think understanding what your challenges are and then going about mitigating the challenge and making it a strength is what has enabled us to perform.
Love that. And being candid and honest with yourself about that. You were kind of talking earlier about that frank assessment of the current environment, and you can't wear rose-colored glasses. That doesn't help anybody.
Not at all.
I really appreciate
the customers looking at you like, wait, this doesn't meet our needs, or this is late, or that's just not good.
So, from where, at least my opinion here, risk management for years now has been added, given a seat at the table. And we see companies hiring, chief risk management officers, chief risk officers and whatnot. And then of course the pandemic has really, there's been a lot of risk in the collective blind spots of industry. So there'll be a lot of doubling and tripling down of how do we effectively, put in place our risk management strategy and then actively and successfully manage that. And I know, from our earlier calls, this is an area of passion and true expertise for you. So if you were to offer a couple best practices and suggestions around, effective and successful risk management for our listeners here, what would that be, Ingrid?
So I know for us it's two things. For us during the capture phase, we identify risks, right? So we're going after this business. Here are the risks associated with taking on this business. And we've got to not only, once we identify the risk, delve into it further to how do we mitigate that risk versus realizing it. In supply chain, there's all kind of tools companies have created, and they're like, oh, you can use this tool. It's going to create an algorithm. That's good to a point. because an algorithm, I can look at companies D and B and see that they're in financial trouble, right? I can look at weather patterns and see, I've got companies in harm's way in California amidst the fires. I can see I've got suppliers in India in the midst of the pandemic. I can see those things, but how do I look forward enough to know that if anything do happen in these areas that we can perform? And so the other part of it is, once you understand the risk, is how do you mitigate it? And sometimes you've got to invest in mitigating that risk. It's just not, I can add 2 people instead of 1. I can go sit at a supplier and just micromanage them. Sometimes some investment is necessary, where it's getting materials ahead of time. It's investing in a technology that will improve probability of success. There's things that we've got to do to make sure we mitigate the risk. And so my opinion, and it's very simple, having been in supply chain for so long, a lot of people say, oh, we look 30 days ahead. I'm like, no, we look 60 and 90 days ahead. That's what we were doing before the pandemic. And that's not just calling a supplier and saying, hey, how's it going? They're like, oh, it's fine, we're going to deliver. No, I want to know what of the bill of material you've received, what's still outstanding, when is it coming in, what's the status of it? You got to go to that level of detail. But in the midst of the pandemic and the import and export and shipping, we're seeing all kind of other variables now be introduced. Although they were there, they're heightened now. We've got to understand, what are the alternatives to shipping on water. I've been in a place on the F-22 program back in the day, in aeronautics, actually on C-130 program, where one of our suppliers was on a strike, right? So they were completing parts literally the day that they needed to be installed, and we have done all the workarounds we can. We were putting them on a C-5 aircraft and flying them in the same day. Right. So those aren't the best case scenarios. It's something you don't want to have to do all the time, but you have to look at where can you mitigate that risk. And so 30, 60, 90 is our normal rhythm. Right now, my team is looking 6 months ahead. 6 months to say, when do you have everything you need? If you don't, where are they? When is it coming forward? What can we do to help you? We're utilizing some of our purchasing power to get things expedited, whereas the supplier doesn't have that kind of pull and influence. Those are just the basic things versus the tools that are going to give you the algorithms that you can look at data. I've created, our team is under me, has created a dashboard so we can go in and we can see red, yellow, green performance, from schedules to cost to deliveries to quality to, all of these things, which enables us to also look ahead. Where there's yellow, what do you need to do to make it green?
I like that. So by extending kind of that forward-looking view from 30, 60, 90 to 6 months, it seems like you're really pushing proactively some conversations that otherwise would as things come up, it'd give you less time to proactively solve or even react in some cases. Is that kind of what you're seeing?
Yes, for sure. And think about it, in industry right now, we know that electrical components, right? Electronics is a shortage in certain components. We know chemicals, there's a shortage going in certain of them. And we know raw materials, there's a shortage. So how do you get ahead of that need and that shortage? And sometimes it may mean buying material way in advance of need, just to know that supplier has it on site, right? It's not a practice you want to use, but it's there if needed to mitigate the potential risks that exist.
It seems like curveballs keep coming, and new curveballs that we haven't seen before. And I've heard it said that risk management is supply chain management, and vice versa. And there's a lot of truth there.
Really
I've always thought. Okay, so I want to take the conversation broader, but before we do, one of the things I haven't asked you about, our dear friend, mutual friend, Shan Cooper, is who connected us. And I'm so grateful. Really have enjoyed getting to know you better, and now hearing kind of more of your leadership POV and practitioner POV. But I understand y'all work together at Lockheed Martin. What was one of your favorite aspects to how Shan Cooper approached leadership or her role? What was one of your favorite things there?
Shannon is an example for so many things. As a leader, she treated everyone the same. She treated everyone fairly, regardless of age, color, background. She knew names, she knew backgrounds. She just was this very personable individual. And on top of that, she's always values. Her values are important to her. Values come out in everything she does and says. And she just became a natural mentor for me. And I'll tell you, there was a point in time where public speaking was not my forte. And one of our communication leads, she says, think of two people that you admire in how they speak and, mirror them. And Shan was one of those people. And so she says, develop this stage persona of who, you want to be. And one was Janet Jackson and the other was Shan Cooper, right? And it was like, so my name was Shannon Jackson. And when I come on stage, it was like this personality. And she doesn't want a script. She just wants to be herself. And I find myself, I'm more comfortable like that too. So I'll never forget when Shan left the Lockheed Martin Marietta location. And I mean, people were walking down the hall crying. She got in her car and there was a string of people waiting. The fire truck came out. If you know, when they're retiring an aircraft, they do the water hose over the aircraft. They did that for Shannon. She was leaving. There was just this procession of people going out. And it's because she's just genuinely a kind person and that I admire and have always tried to mirror.
Hey, I'm with you. We got we might be second cousins or something. We have a lot of camaraderie, and I'm the same way. I'd never had a chance to work with Shan Cooper, and I've kind of admired from afar as I've seen her interactions and her keynotes, and then we had a chance to work together as part of a supply chain awards show just before the world changed. This is March 2020, and everything you described. She was MC, but gosh, just genuine. You could tell that she loved the interactions and celebrating the good news and accomplishments of others and just a rock and roll star on and off the stage. So Shan, if you're listening, two big fans, two members of the Shan Cooper fan club Atlanta chapter, right here.
Always.
All right. So shifting gears, I want to make sure I didn't forget that. So shifting gears, going back to kind of what, trends, innovations, developments in the global business market. We've talked about a lot already, but what else, is there another item or two that you're tracking more than others that you'd like to share your POV around?
So the big focus right now, obviously, is digital transformation, right? How do we change the way we do business? And I've seen so much transformation from when I started as a buyer. I mean, we did POs on carbon, right? And now everything is in the computer and you're attaching and you're doing those types of things and just getting a PO placed, but it's also digital transformation in not how do we buy, right? It's not a traditional, you send me 4 volumes of bids and I'm going to go through all of this. It's now on computer. If you submit as concise as possible. And we're seeing our customer do that in OTAs, right? And so they want to be able to contract earlier, faster, less bureaucracy and those type of things. So we're having to adjust and be responsive to the customer. And then the other side, obviously, is digital transformation as it relates to, how parts are made and how they're manufactured and how they're used. We're doing 3D additive manufacturing versus the traditional, milling and machines. And so it's the technology has to move with the times, and we are responsive to that. And if anyone knows our CEO and president, Jim Takelet, he talks about 5G mill, right? We've got all these products from, you can see in the picture, from ships to aircraft to helicopters to, the equipment on that the Army uses to train. And so it's how do you connect all of these, right? So when you think about digital transformation, our future is connecting these products that enable our customer to utilize them from air, sea, and ground. And that's just exciting stuff, right? And I think about where I started to where we're going, and it's just truly exciting.
Completely agree. It's a special time to be in global business and supply chain. And right now, despite all the, the challenges and as we've talked about extensively and getting behind some of the efforts, we're trying to get the whole world into this post-pandemic environment, right? I
Yes.
think um, we're starting to see some better numbers in India, for example, which is great news. Man, it's been heartbreaking some of the things there, but we're going to break through. We're going to break through, and I think some of the silver linings is how the world's gotten smaller in many ways, thanks partially to technology. You were talking a second ago. The empathy we have as colleagues and leaders and managers and just fellow fellow humans. Who
Yes.
cares if a cat walks in front of your conference call screen these days? You know what? I couldn't believe we got so wound up about that a few years back. But one last question, and then we'll make sure we let folks know how to connect with you. Is with all of the technology that's permeating industry and certainly driving digital transformation across supply chain, do you think that will help bring more people and more of the top talent into the industry? Do you think that's going to be a nice equalizer?
I hope so, and I think so. The times of everyone being in the same office in the same space is just passé. I've got people, in California that they were like, "How soon should I move?" And I was like, "You don't have to move. Stay where you are." Right. So it truly enables us to get talent as well as technology across the globe. And we're excited, what that brings to us, because there are people you're hearing more, right? I want to be near my parents. My wife works here and we need to be here. The kids love the school they're in. You're hearing all these things that the flexibility has become more important since the pandemic than any time before in my career. And I'll tell you, and even having discussions with other companies, it's like, well, is it virtual? Do you have to be there? It's just the sign of the times. And when I'm hearing in other industries also, it's not just A&D, right? It's just how can we be more flexible? There are some jobs that you're not going to be able to, obviously, manufacturing, classified environments, those type of things,
Right.
where you're going to have to be there. But everything else just opens up the bandwidth of talent that you can get around the world. And I'm so excited about that.
I'm with you. I'm with you. I think it expands the industry into new pools and with new ideas and different takes on the problems, old, new, that we see here today, and more challenges will undoubtedly around the corner. So I'm looking forward to continuing for the supply chain industry to fight better and more effectively for the top talent across the globe. Okay. Well, Ingrid, we've covered so much ground, but I know you stay really busy. I appreciate the time you've given us here today. Really have enjoyed it. Um, let's make sure that our listeners know how they can reach out and compare notes, or who knows, you may be doing a keynote or you name it, more interviews. How can folks connect with you?
I think the easiest way is on LinkedIn. Ingrid Kelly Sampson on LinkedIn is the easiest way. I see it constantly between putting things in and people contacting me, is the best way. And I look forward to meeting new people as well as learning what technology is out there.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, we'll make sure we make it really easy for our folks. We'll put that LinkedIn link in the show notes. One click away is what we always shoot for. But a pleasure to meet. We've been talking with Ingrid Sampson, Director, Subcontract Program Management with Lockheed Martin. Really appreciate your time here, Ingrid.
Thank you, Scott, for the opportunity to speak.
You bet. Okay, so folks, hopefully you enjoyed that as much as I did. Really have enjoyed getting to know and learn from Ingrid and what she shared, not just here, but we really enjoyed the prep call conversations too. Hey, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to venture over to supplychainnow.com. Check out the wide range of interviews we offer. Find us wherever you get your podcast from. Hey, subscribe so you don't miss a single thing. We don't want to miss conversations like this one. And hey, by the way, June is our big push for reviews and subscriptions. So your reviews will help us reach more people and share POV like Ingrid's here today. So, but hey, most importantly, hope this finds you wherever you are. Hey, but do good, give forward, be the change that's needed. Be just like Shan Cooper. And on that note, we'll see you next time right here at Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for being a part of our Supply Chain Now community. Check out all of our programming at supplychainnow.com and make sure you subscribe to Supply Chain Now anywhere you listen to podcasts. And follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. See you next time on Supply Chain Now.